life we make decisions that will follow us throughout, and we will lose things that will push us to make decisions that we might regret later. Yet, in order to fix and mend those mistakes, sometimes we have to make sacrifices, even if it's something else we don't want to lose. And with the loss of Edward and Alphonse's mom, they made a decision that would change them in their entire life. FULLMETAL Alchemist is the first adaptation of the manga made by Hiromu Arakawa in her manga FULLMETAL Alchemist. Yet this adaptation doesn't fully follow the manga, unlike its future counterpart FMAB, or FULLMETAL Alchemist Brotherhood. And even with the adaptation still being based off the same manga, the tone and feel of each show is very different. The version we are reviewing today is much darker and emotional, while FMAB is more shonen epic feel with some emotional stops. In the end though, I believe both are great, it's just depending on what sort of tone a show will fit your taste. Also, for the sake of this review, we are going to act like 2009 version FULLMETAL Alchemist Brotherhood doesn't exist, since when FMA was airing, it didn't exist. Yet whenever I decide to review FMAB, I will surely add some sort of comparison since, well, FMA did exist at the time. Nonetheless, enough talking, let's take a look at the first anime adaptation, FULLMETAL Alchemist. The story of the series starts off with two brothers, Edward and Alphonse, living in a world of alchemy, and living by the rule of equivalent exchange, where you must give up one thing to create another, but there is a rule against human transmutation, and this is the rule that the two brothers broke one day, when their mother died and they were trying to bring her back, but instead it rebounded and took the entire body of Alphonse, and Edward lost his left leg and lost his right arm when he was trying to transmute his brother's soul to a piece of armor. So the brothers then set off to find a way to get their bodies back, or in this case, the biggest lead they had was being a stone called the Philosopher's Stone, that can break the boundaries of alchemy. And this was the bulk of what we follow in the show, except for a few twists along the way, and like I said, the show has a heavy emotional tone to it, that put these two boys and the others around them through a lot of pain and suffering, and the feeling of helplessness. And the show handles the topics of sacrifice very well, all the way to the end, really tackling issues of what is worth sacrificing and showing that everything can't be solved through the power of magic or alchemy. Sometimes you have to choose between what you want and something else, and also looking at a little shallowly at the topic of genocide and racism in the world. But between the topics and themes, the show has enough action to keep many entertained, and comedy that isn't too in your face, but enough that will help balance out the tone of the series. Then another point of interest is the world building. While I feel the world building in general is very good, there can be sometimes a disconnect between the bigger picture of the world and then the smaller picture when we're with Edward and Alphonse. And when we're with them, I feel it's very well done. We get a close understanding about where they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And in general, when we're with them, we learn a lot about the world, yet the bigger scope of the world is a little muddled. While they point out a few times that they were in this major war with other countries, those parts feel disconnected from the rest of the story and feel like they should have a bigger impact than rather some side kind of story while they're having this big battle with these other countries. And sometimes it just feels the bigger building blocks of the world feel kind of empty and kind of disconnected from the main story, which I feel like there should be some sort of connection there. In the end, it doesn't have that big effect on the story, but adding those few building blocks could make the world feel better and more lively. Another thing that the show does have is a few filler episodes that for the most part help to add to the show rather than being a nuisance to throw off the focus of shows like many other fillers out there. Yet I will say the show does have points that made me pause for moments. They felt like more shock value than actually adding to the meaning of the story, and I felt it did become more of a distraction to which they could have gone a completely different route to avoid how they handled a few events. Without spoiling it, I will say this entire Shao Tucker part past his introduction in his first art felt forced and more of someone they wanted to keep around for shock value. And the show does this a few times, especially near the end when I felt the hinges started to come loose from the rest of the story. And while I do think the ending matches the tone and themes that the show present, it introduces and uses characters as more chess pieces rather than actual people, such as the big example Hohenheim, who were just used to get to the end of the show, and it kind of felt anticlimactic too, where even the movie with a true ending I felt didn't really rectify it. But either way, seeing the brothers' benevolent attempts at trying to fix the problems that they created and seeing what decisions they would make in the end make the story worth a try. Also, the action, comedy, and emotional moments help too, especially if you like darker tones. The selling or buying point for the show for many I feel is the characters, and this is one of the more disconnected points for the show for me. I feel that that many had a large amount of depth and story to them, yet in the end a large amount of altogether get forgotten. Let's first look at the brothers, the main focus of the show. They in turn get the most screen time and development compared to the rest, which makes sense. They grow together, they work to learn without each other and figure out and make decisions that in the end might not be the best for themselves, but something they wanted to do for others, and the rest of the show seems to just pick and choose who develops and who doesn't. Such as characters like Mace Hughes, Lust Izumi, and Sword of Mustang get their time to shine, and we learn about their motives and the things that in turn can change them or do change them. You also notice that many of the characters in this one FMA that get a lot of focus seem to get a much less focus in FMAB, especially Mace Hughes, Izumi, and Lust. Yet characters like Winry, almost all of the homunculus other than Lust, Hohenheim, Riza, Hawkeye, and Kimberly seem to get forgotten, or if they get focus, it has a little impact or effect on the characters, and there are very little purpose for them other than some sort of plot progression, which I am very torn on the characters because I really like the development of the brothers, Hughes, Scar, and I like some of the characters too, like Winry, yet the missing link of many of the other characters leaves less of an impact than I think many of the characters could have, and even characters that get development at time felt annoying and more like a nuisance to the story, such as Shao Tucker and Wrath, who were characters who just wouldn't go away and seemed to have no real purpose for being there other than getting in the way. So while I love the development for a few set of characters in the show, and the impact of the few scenes that they have are heart-wrenching, the show's character-wise is a mixed bag for me. I think for many, while many of the characters can be enjoyable, I felt like they were underutilized in this adaptation of the story. Being a show that was made in 2003, it seems to have aged some compared to shows nowadays, especially since it was shown at a 4:3 ratio. But the show being made by Bones does have a strong visuals, and the art is unique in having a variety of designs for characters who are all well detailed too. The color palette for the show is very drowned out colors in darker tone, and even when it is supposed to be bright and colorful, there seems to be a layer that drowns it out. But this fits the tone that the show has. While I personally would like some parts to be brighter in colors, it still fits. Animation wise, it's good, but there are points where you can tell it's a little dated. Aside from that though, the fights and at times random conversations and movement are well animated and detailed with a few freeze frames, which almost every show has now. Music wise, it uses a wide variety of orchestral music that fits the emotional tone throughout, having the brothers' main theme being one of the songs that truly stands out, and is overall a very strong and beautifully toned OST. The show does also have 4 OPs and EDs. While I enjoy them all, some stand out above others. As for OPs, my favorite being the last one, Rewrite, which is a hard down rock song with some absolutely stunning animation and visuals, and my least being the first, Melissa, which, while enjoyable, I felt didn't fit the tone of the show. As for endings, my favorite would be the second, with a beautiful chill rock song that is atmospheric and well done animation. As for my least favorite, I would say ED3. I personally found the backing animation very strange, only focusing on Winry, and the song in general wasn't my taste. Otherwise, the show's music and art are all very strong and fit the tone of the show perfectly. So, in conclusion, FMA is a very emotional, story and character-driven show focused largely on Edward and Alphonse Elric, who are attempting to get their bodies back and watching them learn about themselves and truly understanding the mistakes that they have made and what it truly means to sacrifice something is very well done, and the action and emotional scenes are entertaining, and the story in general, for the most part, is well written, even though at times the story can feel a little forced and pacing may linger some, and some of the characters aren't fleshed out to their full potential. I feel the show deserves an absolute watch for anyone, especially if you plan on watching FMAB. Other shows I would recommend that are similar, I'm going to point out FMAB here, because it is a show you almost need to watch after FMA. You will find the first 13 episodes may be a little rushed, but past that, it is an amazing adaptation, an amazing show in general. But another show I would say, and not FMA, would be Hunter x Hunter. Well, much longer, is another extremely well-written shonen anime and one of the best in the genre, following Gon as he tries to find his dad who left him as a baby or a kid, and believe me, it is much more exciting than it sounds. Lastly, I would say Soul Eater, another shonen anime made by Bones, where there is a lot of fighting and a pretty decent story about kids attending a school made by death. And that is it for my review of FULLMETAL Alchemist. One day I will review FMAB, but for now, tell me what you thought of FMA, or if you think that you will watch it now. Otherwise, my name is the Arcane Keyblet, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.